some big updates as far as India-Canada row is concerned, Vedant. Canadian police have now accused Indian diplomats and consular staff of clandestine and criminal activities in the country hours after senior diplomats were expelled from both countries in an escalating geopolitical row. In fact, speaking to reporters, the head of Royal Canadian Mounted Police said the force had evidence of agents acting on behalf of the Indian government engaging in extortion and intimidation, Vedant.
That's right. The Indian government, in fact, has conveyed that India reserves the right to take further steps in response to the Trudeau government's support for extremism, violence and separatism against India. In fact, this is as India's diplomatic ties have really hit an all-time low with Canada. In fact, let me go across to our senior colleague Vishnu Shom, who's joining us live. So Vishnu, this doesn't augur well for either of the countries, but this is certainly an all-time low as far as the diplomatic ties are concerned, though India's stand has been constant that Canada needs to put out evidence for all the allegations they've been making.
Well, Canada does now say that they put out evidence that this evidence, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says, was shared in Singapore between high-ranking Canadian officials and the Indian National Security Advisor and his team. Be that as it may, India believes that the allegations that the Indian High Commissioner in Ottawa and several Indian diplomats were people of concern in Canada's investigations into allegations of a plot behind the death of Nijjar, the Khalistani terrorist, completely unacceptable. New Delhi says that that's something that India can never accept. Canada also said that they expelled the Indian diplomats. India says, no, in fact, we withdrew them. Irrespective of that, India has asked for the withdrawal of 6 Canadian diplomats as well, including their acting High Commissioner. There was an overnight press conference by the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in which he said that it was his responsibility to ensure that the territorial integrity of Canada was maintained while Canada respects the territorial integrity of India. India, for our part, has been absolutely clear that there is no question of doubting the territorial integrity of Canada, but the question over here is about the free run allowed of Khalistani terrorists and extremists, some of whom are within the cabinet of the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. New Delhi, in a statement yesterday, had pointed out Trudeau's deep association with those close to the Khalistani cause, which New Delhi finds unacceptable. Delhi says that the freedom of speech is all, of course, very important, but that cannot be used as a garb or an excuse to allow these elements to continue in Canada to operate in quite the manner in which they have.
All right, Vishnu, thanks very much for joining us with the latest there. In fact, my colleague Maha Siddiqui also sent us his report from Vancouver.
Today in the morning here in Canada, that they did have evidence that they wanted to share with the Indian side, and they are claiming that one of their top cops, in fact, wanted to hold a meeting with his Indian counterpart, but that meeting was unsuccessful, as in they could not have that meeting, after which he joined the Canadian senior national security advisor in meetings with the Indian government, where they are willing to provide proof to the Indian side, alleging, as you have already mentioned, Vedant, that the Indian High Commissioner to Canada himself, Sanjay Verma, is a person of interest in this matter, which means that they are making direct allegations against the Indian diplomats. In fact, the RCMP has also said that they were holding this press conference under these circumstances where the investigations are still underway, to explain their position, saying that and alleging rather that the Indian diplomats had leveraged their position, their official position, to in fact indulge in what they call activities that are malign in nature. So they have made these allegations, which India has completely rejected. And the expulsion has happened from both sides. The Canadian side, in fact, after the RCMP report conveyed to the Indian side that Sanjay Verma is a person of interest, after which India withdrew 6 of its diplomats, including the High Commissioner. And then in a tit-for-tat, India expelled 6 diplomats from the Canadian side, which includes the acting High Commissioner, Stewart Wheeler, who we heard last evening in India when he went to the Ministry of External Affairs, where he was summoned after this entire fiasco, which has led to the ties between India and Canada hitting an all-time low.
In fact, even as the diplomatic row between India and Canada is escalating, Vedant, Indian Inquiry Committee is to travel to Washington DC on 15th of October. An Indian Inquiry Committee that was established to investigate activities of certain organized criminals is actively investigating the individual who was identified last year in the Department of Justice's indictment as an Indian government employee who directed a foiled plan to assassinate a US citizen in New York City.
That's right. In fact, let's go back to our senior colleague Vishnu Shom, who continues to be with us. So, Vishnu, what exactly will the inquiry committee be looking at?
At the time when all of these allegations have been made by Canada, there has been a simultaneous process with India reaching out to the United States as part of conversations with the United States following allegations of an alleged Indian involvement in an attempt on the life of Pannun, who was a Khalistani extremist in the United States. Now, an Indian inquiry committee, which was established to investigate activities of certain organized criminals, is now in the United States. So they will be shortly in the United States. They are coordinating very closely with the US government. Essentially, the US wants cooperation from India to identify any alleged link with those who may have been associated with the government of India, who are associated with the government of India, or were associated with the government of India. India has all along said that we are willing to go by, any assistance that is required in terms of America furthering its investigation. The US statement says that India has informed the United States that they are continuing. In other words, New Delhi is continuing efforts to investigate other linkages of a former government employee and will determine follow-up steps as necessary. So, that's a process happening with America, and that is with regard to the alleged plot or alleged involvement of Indian agents, call it what you may, or those Indian people may have known about in the attempt on Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, who India sees as a Khalistani terrorist, and that's been happening parallelly to what's been happening in Canada, with Canada investigating allegations of an India hand in the death of the Khalistani terrorist Nijjar.